Let's just step through some of Labor's proposed changes. First of all, they're calling for gig workers, talking about Uber Eats, Deliveroo and so on, that they deserve a minimum wage. Do you agree?
Well, there are about 1 million independent contractors in Australia, which is about 8 to 9% of the total workforce. That percentage has been constant for about a decade. Gig workers fall inside that category of independent contractors. They contract with employees and they are not subject to minimum wage requirements. Now, whether or not there should be improvements in some areas is something that's open for debate. Certainly, with respect to delivery drivers, safety is a real issue. But that isn't an issue that turns on how people are remunerated. That's an issue that turns on making sure that existing laws are properly enforced in that area. So this is a complicated area of the Australian economy. Obviously, safety is an issue, but what Anthony Albanese has proposed is a radical restructure of the way in which people who are in non-permanent positions in the Australian economy get paid and remunerated and what their benefits are. And he can't run away from that inside 24 hours after delivering the speech. And what he's promised there comes at a massive cost to business in Australia, which would manifest in a tax. Indeed, Anthony Albanese himself said, if you want to know what he's going to do, look to the situation that has arisen in Victoria. In Victoria, they're running a trial of paying sick leave to casual employees. That's being funded by the taxpayer, and when it's broadened, it'll be funded by a levy, i.e. a tax on business. And when you look at what Anthony Albanese proposed in his speech, although the version did change between it being released to the media and actually delivered in Brisbane, but what he promised was this: to develop portable entitlements for annual leave, sick leave and long service leave for Australians in insecure work.
Okay, and I'm going to delve right into portable entitlements. I will. I just wanted to address these gig workers first of all. Yes, we've had contract workers in Australia for a long time, but there has been a proliferation of this new type of worker, if you like, particularly with delivery drivers. You said there's a debate here, but what's your view? Do they deserve a minimum wage or not?
Well, I mean, these are very complicated questions which need consideration, economic modelling. We need to understand what the costs would be to business, to the contractors, to the consumer, whether or not businesses would survive any increase in wages. But again, these are things that can be considered soberly and sensibly, step by step.
Okay, but are you doing that? Again, these workers have been out there for a while. Are you doing this modelling? Is this a project you think it's worth taking on, or is this not something that's happening at the moment?
Well, I think the primary project with respect to independent contractors, and particularly that part of them that are in the gig economy, is the safety of delivery drivers. And that is about making sure that existing health and safety laws are applied, enforced, policed, and I would have thought that that's the single most urgent issue. One issue that the government is dealing with, which is also urgent, is ensuring that there's a consistent and strong pathway for people in casual employment to become permanent, something that the Labor Party agrees with in principle, but is going to vote against because it happens to be in a bill put before Parliament by the government. So talking about
so on safety,
being on the side of workers when he won't vote for a proper path for casuals to convert to permanent, he will vote against a criminal penalty for wage theft and yet gets up and tells people that he's on the side of the workers. Well, he can say it, but it's simply not borne out by his actions.
So on safety, you mentioned there in terms of that being a priority, doesn't it stand to reason? I think we've had 5 delivery driver or delivery worker deaths in the past few months, that if they are struggling to get even a minimum wage, they will take risks and are more likely to be killed as a result.
Well, the occupational health and safety laws are a responsibility of state governments, and they must be absolutely enforced no matter the category of a person's employment. And the first order of business here, as we have identified in the councils of state ministers that deal with these matters, is to ensure that the laws are properly being applied and enforced.
But again, the question I just put to you around if someone's wage is quite low, if they can take risks, maybe get through that orange or red light, whatever it might be, that's more likely to have an impact on a worker's safety if they're struggling to earn a wage.
Well, where is the evidence that the major problem here is not that the laws are not being adequately applied and enforced. There are very strong laws to protect the safety of employees of all different types, irrespective of their type of employment and remuneration. And they are the laws that should be the focus of when we're trying to ensure the safety of a whole range of workers, whether they're in construction or whether they're in delivery services.
All right, let's talk about portable leave in this scheme. So Labor's explanation I'll put to you is that it would only transfer existing rights. So if a worker, if they are entitled in a job to sick leave, annual leave, long service leave, even if they're a permanent short-term worker, so on a 6-month contract, that would transfer from job to job. So it's not an extra entitlement. Is there anything wrong with that principle?
Well, that's not what was in Anthony Albanese's speech. It just is actually not what he said. This is what he said, that they would develop portable entitlements for annual leave, sick leave and long service leave for Australians in insecure work. Now, insecure work, as the union movement has been arguing for a long time, is non-permanent work. So casual employees, contractors, there's 2.5 million casuals, there's 1 million contractors. Anthony Albanese went out and pretended to be on the side of workers by making an unqualified, unrestrained, unlimited global promise that if he were elected, he would apply annual leave, sick leave and long service leave for Australians in insecure work. There are 3.5
But did he mention in his speech that it was for casuals?
He made that promise.
Did he mention in the speech specifically it was for casuals?
Well, he said this. He would develop portable entitlements for annual leave, sick leave and long service leave for Australians in insecure work. The Labor Party, the union movement, have been defining insecure work as independent contractors and casuals for many, many years now in their arguments about the casualisation of the Australian economy. If casuals aren't insecure work, what is it, Tom?
Well, could it be someone on a series of contracts, 3, 6 months? It's permanent work in terms of definition of entitlements, but it's not ongoing.
I'm absolutely certain that they'd be included in the definition of insecure work, but they're not the only ones. You can't possibly tell me that what Anthony Albanese was trying to do last night was to appeal to the broadest number of people by telling them that they would get more money in their pay and more entitlements if a Labor government was elected. The point that I make is that if you do what Anthony Albanese said he would do, which is provide leave, annual leave, sick leave and long service leave to Australians in insecure work, of which there are 3.5 million casuals and independent contractors, that a cost attaches to doing that. And that cost is about $20 billion. Now, he said, look to Victoria if you want to see the model for that cost. And that cost, it's levied on business in the form of a tax. And this isn't my speech, right? This is Albanese's speech. He's had 7 years in opposition and
we'll
2
continue
years
to ask
to come up
them
with
for
a policy,
detail
and he's come up with it.
On that, Minister, yeah, but what if it would apply to people with existing rights?
You're not asking them the detail. You're asking me the detail. You're asking me the detail.
Well, I'm asking you because you're on the program
Anthony
now.
Albanese.
I'm asking.
Yeah, sure.
No, I'm asking.
It's not my policy, right?
I understand that, but what about if that same principle would apply to somebody with those rights? So you're just talking about portability of rights. Would that be something you could accept?
But that's not what Anthony Albanese said he was going to do if he got
Well, he didn't
elected.
actually say casuals, though, as you were quoting there. The word casuals wasn't in there.
He said Australians in insecure work. Tom, are you seriously telling me that Australians in insecure work does not include casual employees?
Well, it could well. Again, it's not your policy. It's also not mine. I want to get to one other quick topic.
Isn't it incumbent on the person who has a policy which is a radical change to the way in which Australians are remunerated in the industrial relations system? Don't they have some responsibility to explain the parameters of their policy?
They do,
the costs of their policy?
and I'll be putting that. Yeah, I've been bidding for both you and the Shadow Minister this week. I'm sure I'll get a chance to talk to the Shadow, and I do intend on trying to get that detail. So I agree with you on that. Just your own policy.
We're all fascinated.
Okay, yes, we are. Just your own policy. The Better Off Overall test, this push to suspend it for another 2 years, or effectively be able to sideline it. It's getting a lot of negativity already from the crossbench, and it's distracting in terms of headlines. Labor's using it a lot. Is it time to just ditch that part of it and try to get the rest of it through?
Well, that change is one small part of the bill. It's meant to extend an exceptional circumstances provision that Labor put into the Act previously in Section 189 of the Act to take into account the exceptional circumstances that some businesses have suffered because of COVID-19. It certainly is featuring in the debate a fair amount. I mean, I don't disagree with you there. I'm in the process of negotiating this week, and that'll continue with the crossbench. I'm not pretending that it hasn't been raised by them, so that'll obviously feature
negatively
in
by them.
The negotiation.
It's impossible to see it passing, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I mean, with the crossbench, there's enormous enthusiasm for some parts of the bill, less for others. That's the process that we go through with the crossbench on virtually every bill that we want to see have secure passage through the Senate. So, you know, this is something that we're discussing at the moment. Not the only thing, but you're quite right. It is something that's being discussed.
And just finally, you also want the Commission, as part of your plan, the Fair Work Commission, that is, to be able to consider overall benefits, including non-monetary benefits. Now, McDonald's has said to that end that should mean food. So if staff score some fries or a Big Mac on their break, that should factor in whether they're better off overall. Do you agree with that?
So what we've proposed is that there should be some modifications to the better off overall test, and they include things like considering at least the quantity or the nature of any non-monetary benefits. It's also not considering hypothetical scenarios that have derailed a whole range of enterprise agreements. The reason why we want to see enterprise agreements concluded faster and more efficiently and more effectively is that people who are on enterprise agreements on average get paid considerably more than the same workers doing the same work under awards. So enterprise agreements mean better pay for more people if we can conclude more of them. Now, in each individual circumstance, whether or not and to what extent a non-monetary benefit is concluded is going to depend on the nature of the non-monetary benefit. But these would have to be substantial things.
All right. Well, we'll perhaps
the increase in pay that you get on an enterprise agreement, right, is 69% on average higher than the pay that you get in the same area on an award. So there is a massive advantage to people being remunerated under enterprise agreements. We have a plan to see more of them, to see them concluded more efficiently, more effectively. That will ultimately lead to upward pressure in wages and job growth. And this is a clear plan. What you had yesterday was a speech from Anthony Albanese where he promises the world, doesn't tell people what the cost of that would be. The cost would be smashing businesses and job growth.